Hi, and we're back again. This is week 2, session number 3, or as I sometimes write it, 2-1. Second week, first meeting. EPA1. Now, today's recording is a mix of some video clips, things I did earlier today. So the clock is going to be a little strange. And in fact, I forgot to start it just now. But probably this session will be a little long. About 65 minutes or 70 minutes. 65분 or 70분. Sorry, but we have a lot to cover today. So let's get started. Alright, our learning objectives. First, we're going to review what we did last class. And then we're going to look again at the CTL, the 학습 자료, the 교수 학습 system. Especially, we're going to look at the assignments. Then we're going to preview, we're going to look ahead at our future Zoom discussions. Then I have my regular lecture, which is today about blending, mixing, merging, combining English and public administration. And also today we're going to start in the book. We're going to talk about introductions, your company introduction and yourself professionally. That's a little different from the introductions we did last time, which were a little bit more personal introductions. Let me turn on my lights. This time we're doing more like at a business meeting, those kinds of self-introductions. Okay? So, first of all, we'll review our second meeting, where our objectives included how to introduce yourself, personal introductions, not too much Korean style, but more of a Western style, how we say our name and things like that. We introduced name cards. My sample name card is up on the 학습 자료. And we started to get familiar with the book. We looked at the front cover, the back cover, the extra materials in the book, and we looked very quickly at the first chapter to see the style, how it works. And I talked a little bit about your daily English. I gave you a lecture about musical math, but actually I didn't talk too much about that, and I already have some students asking me questions. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to do your listening. And your listening logs probably should look something like this chart I have here, which I'm circling now. Okay, there's no perfect system. I'm not going to insist you do one way or another. But what we can see here is that we have 4 main sections. And let me just highlight those in color. First of all, tell me the day, actually the date, that you were listening. We are looking for 1 listening each day. So if you do 2 listenings the same day, it only counts 1 time. Sorry about that. The next thing is the time. And for time, we are talking about at least 15 minutes. Okay, if you cut it short a little bit sometimes and you do 12 or 13, I'm not going to kill you. I'll count it. But if most of the time you're under 15 minutes, then I'm a little concerned. The third section is give me an idea of what you're listening to. And I just called it program here, but I don't care. You don't have to have titles. We can look at it. We can see that it's some kind of identification or listing of what it is you're listening to. Now this one, I want to point out that we don't want to listen to the same thing all the time for 13, 14, 15 weeks of always the same thing. It's not bad to listen to the same thing. I mean, go for it. But we want to listen to a diversity of things, so also other things. So if you're in love with Good Morning Pops, great. Do it every day. Make it your habit. But also sometimes listen or watch different things so you hear different voices. One of the reasons I like our book, as I mentioned last time, is it offers lots of different voices from different countries, different characters. Even though much of it is the same people, much of it is not. Finally, the last thing is, tell me a little bit about the thing that you heard. I wrote topic here, but it's not really important that way. But tell me what it is that you remember. Now, this is not a test. It doesn't have to be everything perfect, but tell me what you remember. So now let's look up and down a little bit. Listen day by day. Again, 2 times in one day only counts 1 time. Musical math says every time you skip a day, you're going backwards. So go day by day. In this chart, we can see March 20, March 21, March 23. Skip the day, and March 24. And it will continue, continue, continue. Tell the time truthfully, please. Don't routinely lie, stretch. Ethics is important in the world, and everybody cheats a little bit here and there, I guess. I guess everybody cheats a little. But this is really to benefit you. So cheating time is hurting you. Okay, again, listen to different things, not always the same thing. Here we can see I had Good Morning Pops and NCIS Season 11. And then I had a TOEIC tips book and The Wizard of Oz, a movie. Notice that TOEIC's tip book is in red. Before that, in time. Down here I wrote 10:30 until midnight. That's fine, but it still only counts 1 day, 15 minutes. Shipobun. 15. You can't count this for 3 or 4 or 5 days. 1 day, 15 minutes. No problem to listen more. Good for you. Under Program TOEIC Tips Book 2, I want to discourage you from listening to teaching tapes, like in this book we're using, or a TOEIC study book. Not that it's bad, but it doesn't give you the diversity of listening that you really want. So maybe once a week to listen to a study book as part of your listening log is fine. Be free. Be happy. Enjoy studying your TOEIC book, your TOEFL book, your English listening exercises book. That's good for you. Do it. But for this class, our purpose is to try to broaden our listening, to open our ears to English in its many forms. So 1 day listening to pop songs is fine. You've got a recording of 3 or 4 songs by the same artist. Well, that's okay. 3 or 4 different artists. Well, that's okay. But not only pop music every day. Not only a study book every day. And if you're into some TV series, even NCIS, which is something I like, but I'm old, right? Don't listen to it every day, because every day doesn't really help you. You want that diversity of listening. Now I'm going to adjust this camera a little bit because I noticed that it's shooting really high. Let's see if we can lower it just a little bit. Look up a little bit. You'll also notice there's a lot of shine on my head. Well, that's too bad. I tried to change the lamp over my head. Doesn't seem to matter. I'm just shiny up top. So, oh well. I didn't want to put cosmetics on. I'm not a makeup man. I don't use cosmetics. Right. And under topics, you can see it's just a few words. Last time I wrote up on the CTL 7 words. 7 words is not magic. It just means something short and simple so that if I ask you a question in the future, you can kind of remember it. Like, Good Morning Pops, one of the characters maybe has a headache and he talked about it. Or in NCIS, one of the actors had a car accident. If you do listen to a study book, give me an idea of what it was you were listening to. And if you're watching a movie or a TV show, again, give me some kind of idea of what's going on. It can be more than 7 words. It can be less than 7 words. Don't write a book. I'm not grading your topic. I'm not even grading your listening, except, did you do it? Okay? And you can see my messy room a little bit on the side, so let's see if I can turn the camera a little bit that way. Oh, that's better. All right. Kinda, sorta. So, day by day, tell the time, listen to different things, and don't write too much. Okay? So that's kind of an introduction to the listening logs. I hope you've already started. If you haven't, please be honest. Don't go back and cheat. Don't supplement. I'm not going to kill you if you miss a couple days here or there. We've got a target. It's in the CTL. I mentioned it last class. And depending on how the semester goes, when we come back to face-to-face, these things can change a little bit. My grading is not very strict. We will negotiate some things as we approach midterms. But the listening logs are not just for me. They also help you. So please don't be too shy about your listening logs. Alright? Now, we're going to introduce some new technology in this class. We have been using recordings because there's a lot of things at the front we want to talk about. And we call that front loading sometimes. Front loading, where we put a lot of information up in the front. So it's been easy for me to just record my lecture, one-way teaching, and then to ask you to do assignments. But this class is really a lot about conversation, communication orally, speaking and listening. So we will move to an interactive platform. Okay? We're going to use Zoom, which you might have heard of. Zoom is a video chat meetings technology. Now, yes, we can use Skype and things like that, but they're much more limited. Skype video allows, I think, 7 participants. Skype audio allows more, but I want to see your faces. And you want to see mine, I hope. There are a few other choices out there, but a number of people on this campus are going to go with Zoom, and so I'm following the crowd. You might be using Zoom in another class. Zoom is not an official technology of Gemyangdae. So if you are not willing to use Zoom, you need to tell me. I cannot force you to use Zoom. But realistically, if we don't have some kind of interactive meeting, it changes the class completely. If you're taking a conversation class, a pure conversation class, then other professors are doing similarly. So let's give it a try, and after 1 or 2 weeks, if we really don't like it and we need to stay in distance mode, this kind of not in the classroom teaching, then we'll look at something else. Because I haven't used Zoom before, and I'm still studying it, even though some other professors on campus are already using it. Right? Some others are already using it. But I decided to wait a little bit and let other people be the guinea pig. Let them take a chance. Let them find the strong points and the weak points. So maybe some of you students actually will know how to use Zoom better than me. We'll find out. We all teach each other. Okay. Continuing down this, other things we're going to talk about in Zoom is that we're using Zoom for only part of the teaching and learning process. Okay? There are some classes that are going 100% Zoom or one of the other discussion technologies. But we're going to stay with recordings for part of the class so that we make use of Zoom for its primary purpose, which is communicating, which is sharing information, which is talking back and forth. The recording is actually a little bit safer. When we have 30 people in the class, it's really hard. Now, this class right now has 15, I think. EPA3 has 15 students. It's safe, don't worry, they're not going to close it. But it's my other classes where I'm really worried, where I have 30 plus students, and Zoom just doesn't work very well that way. You must participate at the scheduled time. Zoom is live. And if you're not there and you're not participating, then you're absent. You're marked absent. In the notices on the CTL, you'll find the URL, the web address, and you can just click on that at the right time to get in the class. That information will be on the notices. We'll talk more about this. We're going to talk a lot more about all the Zoom stuff in the second recorded lecture for this week. The second recorded lecture will be short. It will be just about Zoom. Okay. That second recorded lecture, like all the lectures for this class, you should watch before our Zoom class. And I'm planning to do Zoom class one time every week. Right now, planning one time every week. The second class meeting. You must participate at the scheduled time. Zoom is live. And if you're not there and you're not participating, then you're absent. You're marked absent. In the notices on the CTL, you'll find the URL, the web address, and you can just click on that at the right time to get in the class. That information will be on the notices. We'll talk more about this. We're going to talk a lot more about all the Zoom stuff in the second recorded lecture for this week. The second recorded lecture will be short. It will be just about Zoom. Okay. That second recorded lecture, like all the lectures for this class, you should watch before our Zoom class. And I'm planning to do Zoom class one time every week. Right now, planning one time every week. The second class meeting. For EPA 3, our second class meeting is Thursday at 10:30 a.m. So you should watch all the recorded lectures for that week before that class meeting. Again, right now we're in officially week 2 of the semester. Alright, watch all the recorded videos. Continuing about the preview, you should read all of the other posts, all the other writings for that week before our Zoom. Everything on the CTL, the notices, which take most importance, the e-board, which often will include the materials that we are going to be talking about, and often are the materials that are in our lectures, the recorded lectures, but you want to be ready in our live chat for question and answer. If I lectured about something, if I recorded something, or if there's an assignment on the CTL, have your questions ready so I can answer your questions. Okay? So, all the other posts, the notices, the e-board, the 학습 자료, the chat board, what do they call it? The 자유 게시판, and the Q&A, which I forget what they call that. But you don't need to do the quizzes or the assignments before Zoom. It's good to look at them, and then you'll have an idea what questions you might have. Oh, professor, in the quiz you wrote this sentence, but it's not clear, or there's a typing mistake, something like that. Don't be shy. The discussion time is time to practice our speaking with materials in the book or materials that I put on the CTL, but it's also time for live Q&A if you have questions. Okay? The next video, the second video for week 2, which will be video recording number 4, our official second meeting, shows how you will use Zoom. It will give you a guideline of things to do, things to not do. So don't worry too much about how to do Zoom. I'm going to make a video that talks about what we're going to do. And I've also seen a video in Korean, which will probably be helpful. But every person, every class that uses Zoom might do a few things differently. So don't just follow something you find from somewhere else. Be sure to pay attention to any information I give you about how we will use Zoom. Okay. Take a breath. I'm talking a lot. Everything here, so far, you'll get the key information again. Okay? There's nothing here that's going to kill you. Studying English in Public Administration. That's our today's topic. Alright? Hold on just a second. I want to take a look at something. After we talk about this mixing or merging or blending, then we're going to work through the book a little bit, and finally we're going to do a little bit more about business self-introductions. Okay? So we're going to spend about 15 minutes here, and then we're going to work through the book. 12 minutes here maybe. Alright, so lost my page again. Hang on a second. So in this class, EPA3, we're going to study both public administration, doing that in English, and we're going to study English as it is used for professional purposes. For example, in a government or business office, or in business meetings, or in public events. Notice that I'm wearing a tie here. Now, I'm not wearing a jacket because I'm in my home and it's warm enough here, and I have a couple lamps on my sides. But when I'm teaching, I usually wear a tie. It reminds me that I'm a professional and I should work professionally and speak professionally. And it's one reason why I don't like to speak Korean. Frankly, honestly, because I sound like a uneducated child in Korean. I cannot speak formally, professionally. We're working towards professional English. Of course, when I go to the shop or I'm in a taxi, I don't care. I use whatever Korean I need. But we want to grow our professional language skills so that we sound like we want to sound. We sound professional. So, we can imagine three types of English study in university. General English, which is often English conversation, can also be English grammar and writing. When I say general English, I mean there's no special purpose for that English. It's the kind of English we can use anytime, anywhere. Of course, we could say tourism English is a kind of specialized English, and yeah, a little bit, but let's compare general English to the two other kinds of English that I identify here. The second type of English study in university is what I call test English. It's the English you need to pass a certain kind of test. Usually TOEIC, maybe TOEFL or IELTS or PELT, maybe especially in our department, maybe the public servants exam. And so that's not the kind of English that everybody uses everywhere, anytime. You're probably not going to have a test question about how to order a beer or where's the post office. These are not the kinds of things that are usually on a test. So that's a different kind of English than general English. The third kind of English that I identify is professional English. Professional English here is the kinds of things where maybe you're wearing a tie, or that they are more narrow, more special kinds of English. For example, academic English. If you go to an American or British or Australian university to get a master's degree, you're probably going to take some EAP classes, English for academic purposes, that will teach you how to write a scholarly paper, how to listen to lectures most effectively, things of that nature. So that's kind of a general academic purpose, but not general life. Other people will say that this academic English is different from professional English, and they make 4 types. 1, 2, 3, 4. I usually make 3 and include academic English and professional English together and call it professional English, but it could be 4. All right. Professional English can include reading professional or academic papers, journals, professional magazines. It can include making presentations about your area of work. If you're a public servant, then your presentation would probably be about government or about government services or how society can work together to defeat the problem of the coronavirus. Professional English can include writing documents and reports and theses. That's why I mix professional and academic together. So if I give you this question on your midterm, remember I want 3 types. We'll talk about general English, test English, and professional English. So when we're talking about business English or professional English or any special topic area, and we're really talking about the special language and special thinking and ideas of this topic, and we're also talking about English. So let's look at that. I've got some pictures here that I'm going to show you more directly. All right? So this first thing is Bix and Culp. This chart, this model of chart, I use for several discussions. So let's get familiar with it. Okay, it's a typical chart, and on the x-axis, going from left to right, is a discussion of language. The plus means it's more complicated, more complex, more difficult, more challenging, bigger vocabulary, talking faster, using more slang, anything that makes difficult or complicated, making more language issues. The y-axis, going up and down, is the content, the thing that we are talking about or thinking about. Okay? It's not exactly the words, but the ideas. What are we thinking about? And simpler is lower. And things that make your brain work harder, that are more difficult to understand, to think about, are higher. Now, a very knowledgeable academic about 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago, came up with 2 key words to help us understand how language can be less complex or more complex, kind of styles of this issue. And the pink box to the bottom left is BICS. BICS is basic, interpersonal, communicative. What's the S? I lost the S. Oh my gosh, see, live recording. BICS, basic, interpersonal, communicative. Basic, simple, easy. Interpersonal, more than one person. Communicative, communication, okay? Sharing a message back and forth. Why have I forgotten the S? All right. More complex language, more complex content, he called CULP. CULP. CULP is C for cognitive. Cognitive. Cognitive means thinking, cognition. The brain is working. A is for academic. Academic. Education related. 교육의. Right? Things that are connected to higher studies. L is for language. So, cognitive, thinking, academic, language. P for processing. Processing meaning doing. Cognitive, academic, language processing. In this blue area, your brain is working more hard. More hard. Oh, I do good English, huh? Yeah. The content is more challenging. So you have to think harder. C. The language is more complex because it's more challenging content. We cannot talk about simple things in a complicated way. And P for processing means you're doing it. Now, how does that work for us? Well, something like, let's just shrink that. Something like this. This is kind of a mess. I stole this from somebody else. So, I'm just telling you honestly, I stole it from somebody else. Figure 1, the relationship of language and content in regular language and subject matter classes compared to CBI. Huh? What? Okay. In most situations, students learn their language and their subjects separately. You've got an English class here, and you've got a public administration class over here. English, public administration. English, public administration. 3 hours here, 12 hours there. Something like that. The 2 classes meet separately, maybe don't talk about anything related to each other. But in content-based instruction, which can be called CBI or CLIL, students learn language and content simultaneously at the same time. So we can see the blue language class, the yellow subject matter class, these are overlapping. Well, what we can see also is that they don't overlap perfectly. There is some waste. There is some waste. We cannot possibly do everything at the same time and cover everything. But we can do a lot of things at the same time. We didn't just take 50% of language and 50% of content and stick them together side by side. We merge, we blend these two classes so that we are using English to talk about public administration. And we'll lose some time on each side. We can't take 3 hours and 3 hours together and make 3 hours. But we could take, say, 2 hours of one class and 2 or 2.5 hours of another class and put them together inside 3 hours. That's our goal, that's our topic. Doesn't mean we're going to be successful every time. It's our goal, it's our topic. And just for clarity, to let you know, yes, I stole this imagery from somebody else. That's the web address where I got it many years ago. And I'm not even sure if that link still works, but people who know how to use online archives could find that. And I have done. Okay, so our third image for this time looks like this. So we have, again, our language line, our x-axis, and our content line, our y-axis, axis. Now I've added a word here, intensity. Intensity means like pressed together, power, working really hard. Just to make it a little clearer that we're not talking about any kind of language, but how challenging, how hard we're working in the language, and how challenging, how hard we're working in the subject. Instead of a minus and a plus, you've got a 0 and a 10. Same idea, from nothingness to infinity, to 100%, to maximum. I also have a little star down here about anxiety multiplier. Because you know when you're stressed, suddenly language gets much harder. It's true. Now, I like to talk about multitasking. Many people like to talk about multitasking. But here's the deal. If you've ever tried to do 3 or 4 things on your computer at the same time, working on a big image file, downloading a legal video, doing a chat with somebody, you know that your computer can get slower and slower and finally stop. That's because multitasking is still limited by the memory of the computer. Now for humans, we have a memory maximum too. It is our cognition. Remember cognition? Cognitive? So with cognition, we're dealing with how hard your brain is working. We don't want blood flowing from your nose and ears and mouth as your brain is exploding. That doesn't help anybody. So we have to balance. This chart tries to do that. It says, let's make a mark where our content and language intensities merge. So let's say we're talking very simply, very simply, elementary school English, middle school first year English. And let's just draw a line, something like, that's how hard the language is. And we're talking about a very simple subject. For example, my family. And we've studied that in middle school, and so the content challenge, the difficulty, you know your family really well, right? There's no confusion. You know who your mother and father is, I hope. So let's just say the cognitive challenge, the content challenge is somewhere here. This is the place where the language and the content meet. This is what we chart here by levels. And if you look, you'll see that that area is what I called boredom. Okay? The work is too easy. I lost my picture. Where's my picture? It's going to be a challenge. Hang on a second. There we go. All right. It's too easy. But if we talked about something that was very challenging, let's say talking about my future plans for the year 2040. Well, I haven't thought about it very much. I don't really know what I'm going to be doing in the year 2040, so I'm going to put that up here. Future tense is a little bit harder than simple tense, but let's make it very maybe-like, and we're going to use conditionals like, if I were living in Korea, then I would. Okay, the language is more challenging now. It's going to come up here. Now, for some people, that's just too hard. What we're looking at here is something that I call ideal cognitive load. Ideal means perfect, means best. Cognitive load. How hard is your brain working? What's the best case? Okay? That is a question of balancing language intensity and content intensity. And what this line shows us is if you're using more complex language down here, your brain has less resources, you have less RAM to put into the subject matter. Your brain's already working hard. So if you really want to push your English skills, you want to talk about something you can handle without dying, without failing. On the other hand, if you want to talk about a very complex subject, such as nuclear physics, if you're a nuclear physics student, if you want to talk about the theory of human resource management, which is a little more challenging, up here somewhere, in order to be successful, in order to fit in here, you need to use the language that's appropriate. So let's say human resource theory is complex, but you've taken the class, you understand it, it's somewhere here. If you use simpler English, if you can, it will fit inside the ideal cognitive load. Of course, you could talk about it in Korean easily, but in English, you'd need simpler English to be able to handle it. Because if you try using the high level of English, you're up here in the Greek section, right? And you're dying. So we're trying to balance the language and the content, how much load your brain has. And the problem is that a lot of complex subjects need complex language. So we're going to try to go step by step. We're going to work our way ahead in this class from more focus on language, trying to push our language higher so then we can start talking about more challenging content. In the beginning, we're working in the book a little more, and we're doing more language work that is more general, and as time goes by, we'll start working up the content level. Okay? Okay. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time working through the book. So, we pop over to the PDF file of the book. It's up on the 학습 자료. You can download it. And similarly, you can download your student audio recording so you can work on this anytime you want. Today we're moving down to chapter 1, which is actually page 2. Chapter 1 says, Introductions in the Business World. Business talk. Getting started. And go back and look on the left side of the chapter, the objectives. Why are we studying this? And it says to introduce yourself in business situations. So we did last week self-introduction, kind of a little more personal or a little more timely. I told you 15 seconds or 30 seconds should be fine. But often in a business conversation, it's really short. It's 1 or 2 sentences. And I mentioned last time where you might just say, "Hi, I'm Robert Dickey. Here's my card." And that's it. So we'll be talking this chapter about exchanging basic information. Right? So very minimal stuff. And the third part of this chapter is to use titles and names in different cultures. Because we know in Korea, titles are very, very important. And you call somebody, "Hey, 사장님." That's not so common in the West. I also have, for us, for this time, the audio recordings. So let's just get started with the first conversation. You'll see it's very, very easy.
Unit 1, Introductions in the Business World. Page 2, Business Talk. Getting Started. Exercise 1. These business people are meeting for the first time. Read and listen to the conversations.
Hello, I'm Joan Mead.
It's nice to meet you. I'm Mario da Costa.
Hello, my name's Rick Lopez.
I'm Kenji Takeda. Nice to meet you, Mr. Lopez.
Please, call me Rick.
Hi, I'm Emily Park.
Nice to meet you. My name's Linda Dumas.
And that's all it is. It's that fast. It's that short. It's that easy. And notice we have these other greetings down here in the bottom. You've seen all this stuff in middle school or whatever. Good morning. Good afternoon. Glad to meet you. Pleased to meet you. Nice to meet you. Happy to meet you. Lots of phrases like that. Good to meet you. Glad to meet you. Pleased to meet you. Nice to meet you. Happy to meet you. Please don't say me too. Achoo. Sounds like a cold. Me too. Yes. Meet and you come together. And we have this mixing. But not too hard. Not a sneeze. Nice to meet you. Too. And often in Korea, we'll hear somebody say, "Nice to meet you." Meet you. That's not so good either. We don't want to say "nice to meet you," but we don't want to say "nice to meet you." So somewhere in the middle. Nice to meet you. Pleased to meet you. Happy to meet you. Good to meet you. Good morning, good afternoon. We can say good evening. Right? Evening is still possible. Evening is different from night. Good night means bye-bye. Good evening sounds like I'm still up, I'm still out, maybe I'm finished with work. But when I say good night, it sounds like I'm going home for my pajamas. My public face is gone. Okay? Good night sounds like it's over. I'm going home to go to bed. Good evening could be bye-bye, but good evening could be, "Hey, good evening, nice to meet you." "Good evening, sir, welcome to our restaurant." So we have this little difference. We should also notice that in Korea you're very precise about times. You have your morning and evening, right? Your before dawn. And we're not so precise in English. People disagree. It's not exactly with the sun. It's not exactly with the clock. I mean, morning is before noon. Afternoon is afternoon. But evening and night are kind of fuzzy. We don't have a 새벽, before the dawn. We just say early morning. Okay? We will come back to this page in our live Zoom. But for now, just notice the conversations. I'm hi, hello. What's the difference? No real difference. Just kind of, how friendly are you? How friendly do you feel? So don't worry too much about it. Hello, hi, it's nice to meet you. It's good to meet you. Happy to meet you. All these things are possible. And when we go down to the next page, page 3, we see a small conversation. We're going to listen to that one too this morning, or this evening, whenever you're listening.
Page 3. Conversation. It's nice to meet you. Exercise 3. Read and listen to the conversation.
Good morning, Mr. Lopez.
Good morning.
I'm Emily Park. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Ms. Park.
Let's go to Mr. Hunt's office. This way, please.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Lopez. It's good to see you again. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Okay. Now in this image we can see, if I can move the image correctly, it's hard in this scene. We can see that there is red writing, and in the red, underneath it is an alternative. Another thing we could say. We could say good morning, Mr. Lopez, or we could say good afternoon, Mr. Lopez. Right? We should match. If she says good morning, I should say good morning. Emily Park, it's nice to meet you. Pleased to meet you. I'm pleased to meet you. I'm happy to meet you. There's so many options. We have our freedom. We don't have strict rules. Okay? And we will look again at this during our live chat. This is just a quick starter in the book to get you started. You have this recording. You can play it. You can practice it. I want you to be very comfortable. This kind of talk should be automatic. You don't even have to think about it. Okay? That's a quick introduction to the book. When you introduce yourself, if you talk longer, you have some choices to make. Do you talk about your career or your company or your job title? For example, I could say, I'm an engineer. I'm a computer programmer. This kind of career or field of work, you can change companies. In fact, my brother changed companies. He worked 5 or 6 different companies. In fact, one company he left, and then later he came back. And me too. There was one organization I worked for, and then I left, and I worked another place, and then I came back. So that's focusing on your career. I'm an engineer. I'm a doctor. Or you could focus on your company. I'm a Samsung man. I'm with Gamyeong University. Okay? Or you could focus on your job title. Now to say I am 팀장님 doesn't really make sense. You would say I'm team leader of the marketing division. Or I am chief of engineering. Something like that. And then you could add your company or not. Usually we don't like to say I work at. We prefer to say I work with. Because work at sounds like you're low, like a cleaning woman. 청소하지마, something like that. Instead, I want to say, I'm with Gamyeong University. Or I'm a professor of public administration with Gamyeong University. Or professor of public administration at Gamyeong University. I work at sounds lower. And when we talk about what we do, you might think about your typical day, your usual day, the normal day for you. For example, are you a copy girl? A copy and coffee girl? So, a coffee girl says, 팀장님, 차 드실래요? Coffee girl. But a copy girl is the girl that makes all the photocopies, boksagi, work or printing work. Somebody says, make 22 copies of this file. So there's your first introduction to pronunciation, F and P. And we'll talk about that again in the future. So if you say, I work with Gaming University, somebody might say, well, what do you do? And you say, I'm a staff. Oh, what's that? Or I work at I'm a public servant. Oh, where do you work? I work at the service center at Dalsa District Office. Service center? The Minwanship? The Citizen Service Center. Okay? So, you're a gongmuan? You're a public servant? How do we translate this? Well, I like public servant. That sounds like Jimmy Carter. You know, Jimmy Carter, this guy down here. He was president more than 20 years ago of the United States. And he retired, but he still does service. He goes out and builds houses for the Habitat for Humanity. He doesn't get paid. He's almost, nearly more than 90 years old. He's still out working for no money. Public servant sounds like I want to serve the public. It sounds noble. It sounds so good. But public official, I'm a public official. Sounds like I'm so bossy. I'm serious. I'm important, and you're not. So we don't like the word public official. It doesn't sound kind. And public officer, well, we say police officer, and we say military officer. But officer sounds like you have stars or pins on your shoulder, and you know, I'm very important, and you're low. So again, it doesn't sound very kind. It doesn't sound very nice. Another idea is civil servant, and in America, this word is used a lot. We talk about the civil service, people who work in government, not politicians. But actually, civil servant is not a popular word anymore because it sounds lazy. You know, you have your protection, you have your, in Korea, iron rice bowl. You know, your job is safe, your pay is safe, you don't work very hard. Sounds like you're lazy. Well, we don't like the word civil servant very much. So nowadays, we like the word public servant. But we don't know. Maybe in 20 years or 30 years, the language will change and people won't like public servant anymore, and they'll have a new word. So we kind of have to keep up. And that's all for this first lecture of the second week. Remember, there will be a short video, part B, for the second week. And you should watch that. That's going to be mostly about how to do Zoom. And then we'll have a live Zoom chat. So if you are in EPA1 night class, our Zoom chat is from 6:50, 6시 50분 on Wednesday. 수요일 6시 50분. And it will be about 45 minutes. And if you are in EPA1 day class, our Zoom is Friday at noon. So please be sure to watch all the videos and look at everything on the 학습 자료 and the notices before our Zoom meeting. I will put the Zoom link in the notice board. It's a different link for my night class and my day class and my EPA3 class. You should plan to be there about 5 minutes early to make sure everything's working. Be sure to watch the second video that talks about how to Zoom. Thank you.